The time has finally come, my little ratlings. Hearken unto this veteran grey seer as he teaches you about the glory of the Skaven Under Empire. Now, the Skaven Under Empire is by far my favourite faction in Warhammer, just because they're such a unique little collection of bastards. So I'll be splitting this into 3 videos. This will be the lore video, as normal. Then will come a tactics video, because the Skaven fight in a way that is very, very, very different from pretty much all the other factions that I've covered so far. So different that I'd like to give you a bit of an insight into how they fight and what makes them so vastly different from the previous races. And then there will be the army video. Now, I'll probably take the heroes of the Skaven in the tactics video, because that one will be shorter. It won't be my usual 40-50 minute rant, it'll probably be about 20 minutes. And I say that now, and when I make it, it's going to be 2 hours, so you'll excuse me about that. But Skaven lore. The most obvious question to begin with is, what the hell is a Skaven, and why are they so awesome? Well, first of all, just looking at them, you might think that this is a stable mutation of the common everyday rat. That kind of stuff happens in the Warhammer universe. Hell, you have a race of mutated goat people, essentially, in the Beastmen. They are creatures of chaos, so it would be natural to assume that the Skaven are another, well, creature of chaos as a stable mutation. However, that is not quite the fact, although it has parts of truth in it. Because while the Skavens were in all due likelihood created by some sort of chaos power, they hold no allegiance whatsoever to the 4 primary chaos powers of Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. Their loyalty lies with their own deity, the Horned Rat, and while I say loyalty, as you will discover or during the course of this video, the Skaven more or less consider words like loyalty, help, trust, and cooperation as very, very dirty words indeed. And so, their loyalty to the Horned Rat stems more from the fact that they're scared shitless of him, rather than any feelings of compassion. Ah, compassion, another dirty word. And so, the average Skaven cares not one whiff for anyone except for himself, and will happily lie, cheat, betray, and backstab anyone and anything as long as it improves his standing within Skaven society. Or, well, it doesn't have to be such a grand ideal either. A Skaven will gladly stab another Skaven in the back just to get the last cookie, or even just for the sheer enjoyment of stabbing another Skaven in the back, because the bastard probably had it coming. And therein lies the base of the Skaven psychology. If Skaven is 100% convinced that he is correct in all things, and that all other Skavens are not only wrong, but horribly wrong, and therefore they're going to betray him. The vile, skeeving, evil bastards that they are going to try and hurt him, being the only one who's correct, and so he just has to hurt them first. A perfectly valid and justified response, I'm sure you'll agree. And since all Skaven think like this, you can imagine that Skaven internal politics is a truly fascinating thing to behold. And due to their slight mistrust in one another, the Skaven Under Empire is not so much one singular nation, as it is a relatively loose confederacy of hundreds of different and often warring clans of Skaven, only really held together by their shared fear of the Horned Rat and the Council of 13, which is the name they give to their governing body. The Council of 13 is the de facto government, so to say, of the Skaven Under Empire, though they hold fairly limited power, as the local warlord clan leaders usually do whatever they want to do, for the most part, unless directly threatened by imminent and painful death by the Council. And this imminent death and threat of imminent death is the primary way in which the Council of 13 actually rules the Under Empire. A Skaven warlord has no real motivation to do anything the Council tells him to do, if it weren't for the simple fact that if he didn't, well, the Council of 13 is very, very wealthy indeed, and might easily have a few dozen assassins sent to snip this rebellious warlord's tail off. Additionally, as the name might suggest, the Council of 13 is made up of the 13 most vicious, most treacherous, most conniving and powerful Skaven in the entire Under Empire. These council members are called Lords of Decay, and any Skaven can become a Lord of Decay. To become a Lord of Decay, all he needs to do is touch the Pillar of Commandments, a pillar of pure warpstone that was placed in the Skaven capital of Skavenblight by the Horned Rat himself. It has 13 sides, and each side contains 13 commandments, creating a total of 169 edicts, which makes up the de facto laws of the Under Empire. Of course, touching the Pillar of Commandments is not such an easy task. The vast majority of the Skaven who do touch it will be immediately torn apart by chaotic mutations and killed. But a few do survive. Any survivor must then challenge an established member of the council to a fight to the death. If he manages to defeat and kill his opponent, he will take his place and his position within Skaven society, including his riches and his possessions. The current council has remained unchanged through several challenges for the last 200 years. So this current council is a particularly nasty collection of Skaven. And so you can imagine that most Skaven warlords are none too keen to make an enemy out of a council member, never mind potentially pissing off the entire council. Additionally, the Council of 13 is the de facto governing body of the Skaven's sorcerer class, the Grey Seers. Now, the Grey Seers is a sub-strand of mutation within the Skaven race. Sometime a Skaven is born with curling horns on his head and a special tint in his fur. This marks him out as one of the chosen of the Horned Rat, and as such he is allowed to learn magic. Though allowed to learn magic, again slightly misleading. He is put into the tutelage of an existing Grey Seer, and whether that Grey Seer is going to teach the new Skaven magic, or just eat him, well, that's up to how devious and cunning the Grey Seer is. It stands testament to just how devious and bastardly the new Grey Seers is, that usually you can consider their final exam is when they finally outsmart, kill, and eat their mentor. And as they are considered to be special in the eyes of the Horned Rat, to be marked out for greatness, they make excellent emissaries from the Council of 13, because while a Skaven warlord might ignore or kill or lose or, in other ways inconvenience a normal messenger, a Great Seer, well, you could try and kill him, but first of all, he's a really powerful magician. Second of all, he knows you're probably going to try and kill him, so he's going to be ready, and he's going to bring bodyguards. And thirdly, if you do kill him, while the Horned Rat might not care, because, well, if he was stupid enough to get himself killed, maybe he deserves it, but there's always that snowball's chance in hell that the Horned Rat had some special plans for this particular Grey Seer, and is therefore now going to take a very keen interest in seeing your backside burn. And so even the most powerful of warlords are usually a little bit hesitant to outright kill a Grey Seer. And since they can't kill or otherwise dispose of the messenger, they kind of lose the option of just pretending that they never got the message, and so they usually have to carry out whatever orders the council has given them, or risk making an enemy of the entire council, which is usually a surefire way of finding yourself in a really big mousetrap. However, there are 4 great clans within the Skaven Under Empire whose power rivals that of the Council of 13, to the point that it will require two of the other clans to cooperate to actually stop a third clan. And with the Skavens not being known for their spirit of cooperation or mutual trust, this is a very rare occurrence indeed. And yet, the clans are kept in check by the fear of their equals. If one clan gets too powerful, you can bet your ass that the other three are gonna dogpile that one clan. Not for the sake of cooperation or stability, but just because they're becoming a threat. The four clans are, first up, the clan Skryre. The Skryre clan is responsible for most of the technological advances of the Skaven race. They specialize in a bizarre blend of sorcery and science, often using warpstone, which is the raw stuff of chaos materialized into a physical form, to fuel many of their inventions. For example, they have invented such things as the rattling gun, which is essentially an extremely unstable minigun, or the warp fire thrower, or the Jezile, which is a massive musket that fires balls of concentrated warpstone. They have also invented more civil inventions, like for example the massive burrowing machines that dig out the Skaven tunnels, or the huge grain barges the size of entire Empire villages that scours the area around the Skaven capital, Skavenblight, for the black corn, which is used to feed the vast majority of the Skaven population. They have even invented some extremely unreliable and hitherto unsuccessful flying machines. The ability to create these powerful pieces of technology has granted them their position as a great clan. Clan Skryre will happily sell weapons to both sides in a warring conflict, creating a situation where if one clan starts buying Clan Skryre weaponry, they're almost certainly going to have an advantage over the other clan, so the other clan has to start buying Clan Skryre technology, and so on. And this need for Clan Skryre technology has made them the wealthiest and arguably the most influential of the four great clans. And the wealth and influence garnered from the sale of such technology and weapons has secured the clan lord, Morskita, a seat at the Council of 13. Then there's the great clan Eshin. Now, Clan Eshin was originally considered lost, as they were one of the Skaven clans sent off to the Far East to establish the Under Empire. They vanished into the mists of time, and the rest of the Empire considered them gone, probably eaten by ogres or some such creatures. However, Clan Eshin returned several hundred years later. It turned out that the clan had taken up holdings in the human nations of Ind, Cathay, and Nippon, which are essentially the Warhammer world's equivalent of India, China, and Japan. In these countries, the clan Eshin studied the surrounding human civilizations and learned the arts of stealth, infiltration, and assassination. They essentially became rat ninjas. And within a nation like the Skaven Under Empire, these are very handy skills to possess, and so the clan Eshin hires out its members as assassins and infiltrators. And with Skaven politics being less about long drawn-out debates and voting, and more about having your opposition suddenly and violently removed from office, Clan Eshin has no shortage of business. And while they are technically bound by oaths of loyalty to the Council of 13, by this point in the video I'm pretty sure you will know exactly how much an oath of loyalty means to a Skaven, so they are in all due essence a neutral faction, hiring out their skills as assassins, infiltrators, and sabotagers to whomever is willing to pay enough. Just like Clan Skryre, they will happily help both sides of a war. And since they do not possess a standing army as recognized by the other clans, they do not pose a direct threat to the council, which is why they're allowed to go about their business relatively undisturbed. The Council of 13 is satisfied in their loyalty, not because they trust them, but because they know that no one else can outbid them. Now, before I move on to the next clan, a quick note about the Skaven economy. The Skaven economy is based on warp tokens, serving as their hard currency. Warp tokens are created from warp stone, which is why warp stone is so highly valued by the Skaven clans. It's quite literally their gold. And while Skaven, being Skaven, will do pretty much anything they can to steal, embezzle, or otherwise acquire warpstone, the Council of 13 has grown quite expert at collecting the taxes and tithes owed to them, and are so by far the richest of the factions within the Under Empire, though of course they are only the richest as long as the Council is united in purpose, which is a rare event indeed. However, as single persons within the Skaven Empire go, the Lords of Decay are by far the wealthiest, and are thereby relatively safe from assassination, simply because if Clan Eshin were to get a contract on one of the Lords of Decay, odds are they're going to accidentally leak the information that they have the contract to the Lord in question, and see if maybe perhaps he'd be willing to pay more for example, the name of the person who issued the contract. So, moving back to the clans, we have Clan Pestilence. Clan Pestilence was one of the many clans that spread across the world shortly after the creation of the Skaven as a race, their objective to establish the dominance of the Skaven species and create strongholds in far-flung places of the world. Clan Pestilence set out across the oceans and ended up in Lustria. At first, the clan was decimated by virulent tropical diseases that almost wiped them out. However, at the point where they were almost wiped out by the plagues, they started praying to their deity, the Horned Rat, and gained through this worship a measure of immunity to diseases. Now, I don't mean immunity as in they can't get sick, immunity as in they are always sick, and they just don't really notice the effects anymore. Now, if you've been paying any attention to my previous videos, wink wink, you'll notice that this sounds an awful lot like Nurgle, doesn't it? And yes, you would be right, this sounds a lot like Nurgle. However, the Horned Rat is a god of pestilence and decay also, so it could very well be the blessing of the Horned Rat that allows them to stay alive. But on the other side, it does sound an awful lot like beloved grandfather Nurgle, doesn't it? And whether or not it is Nurgle or the Horned Rat, well, we don't know. What we do know is that they were gifted with this resistance to disease. And after this evolution, led by their lord Nurglicht, they set out to conquer Lustria. And although the lizardmen were able to repel the Skaven at horrible cost to their civilization, the Skaven have since returned to the old world, whereupon they entered into a state of civil war with the rest of Skavendom, a civil war that lasted for almost 400 years. These days, though, Clan Pestilence is, if not a respected, then at the very least marginally accepted part of the council, holding one of the seats upon it, and are considered a valuable, if not entirely trustworthy, part of the Skaven Under Empire, highly valued because of their incredible gift to create diseases of extreme deadliness, the most famous of which was the Black Plague, which almost brought the human empire to its knees, and was very, very, very close to ensuring Skaven domination over the surface world. Despite these successes, though, Clan Pestilence is viewed with a certain amount of suspicion, which of course comes naturally to a Skaven, though Clan Pestilence is particularly suspicious because they worship the Horned Rat, but they worship him in a strange, diseased kind of way. The horned rat they worship doesn't quite seem to be the same as everyone else worships, and the Grey Seers in particular take an extremely dim view to Clan Pestilence, seeing as it appears that they are using magic, something that should be the exclusive purview of Grey Seers. And the Skaven are not big on sharing. However, the sheer power of Clan Pestilence, with their ability to release various virulent plagues upon the Under Empire, as well as boasting a significant army, means that they can't really be disposed of, nor can they be ignored, and they do still hold a place upon the council to this day, despite several attempts of having them retired. Last of the four great clans, we have Clan Moulder, the Beast Masters and Mutant Breeders. Clan Moulder has grown powerful through their mastery of the art of breeding and mutating beasts of war and beasts of burden. Their slave warpers used the power of warpstone to breed mutant fighting beasts from slave stock, and then by the use of advanced, albeit crude, surgery skills, they further improve upon the creatures so that they may take ever more heinous forms. The exact methods they use to do this are unknown, for it is a jealously guarded secret of Clan Moulder. Some of their greatest successes come in the form of the rat ogres, the wolf rats, and the tracker rats. The rat ogres in particular are a fine invention, giant rats with the strength of ogres and the brains of peas. They are loyal to a fault, having been bred for incredible loyalty, and having had the more free-thinking parts of their brains generously lobotomized. They are highly prized as bodyguards because, while a Skaven bodyguard might be bribed or threatened in all manners of ways, a rat ogre is either too stupid or too ferocious to be bribed. But Clan Moulder has not only created beasts of war, they have also created vast amounts of beasts of burden. For examples, they were the ones who first created the great burrowing beasts used to dig the Skaven tunnels, long before Clan Scryer invented their magical digging machines. They've also created improved slaves, various Skaven and other races that have had the more free-thinking and initiative parts of their brains removed, and their muscles increased, creating far stronger, far more durable slaves with far less of an inkling of open rebellion. And the sale of both these beasts of burden and their beasts of war has garnered them a considerable fortune. So much so, in fact, that they have acquired a seat upon the Council of 13, and are at the moment considered one of the more dangerous of the four great clans, to the point where the other clans are starting to consider means of censor towards Clan Moulder. However, being the richest clan in the Under Empire also means that Clan Moulder employs practically armies of Clan Eshin assassins and spies, hired to warn the Lord Verminkin, Clan Moulder's Lord of Decay, of any plots made against him. And so any real effort to take down Clan Moulder must first convince Deathmaster Snicht, the Lord of Clan Eshin, to support their claim. And you will have to bring a fearsome amount of warp tokens indeed to buy his loyalty away from Clan Moulder. Lastly, I'll talk about the geography of the Skaven Under Empire. Now, you might have noticed that I didn't start the video with explaining where they were located, which I usually do. The reason for this is because the Skavens are, well, everywhere. The Under Empire is a massive network of tunnels that run beneath pretty much all of the old world. The only place that they so far have been denied access to is the homeland of the High Elves, Ulthuan, where they are held out by powerful magical barriers. But in pretty much all other parts of the Warhammer world, you will find Skavens nesting beneath any substantial population center. For example, under practically every single major empire city is a considerable Skaven stronghold. Even under most dwarven hordes are there Skaven populations. The Skaven even have strongholds to the far north in the Chaos Wastes. Even the Ogre kingdoms themselves are infested with Skaven, and the lands of the Tomb Kings, the Neharans, to the south is equally as thoroughly infested as any other part of the planet. Often, the Skaven population of these strongholds are engaged in what is essentially a small-scale guerrilla war with the race above them. Though, with the employment of magic and carefully timed-out assassinations, the existence of the Skaven as a nation is a fairly well-kept secret from most of the nations of the Warhammer worlds. For example, most of the population of the Empire consider the Skaven to be boogeymen of sorts. They consider them to be figments of imaginations, monsters dreamt up to scare children rather than a very real and living threat. Even nations that are far more aware of the existence of the Skaven, like the Bretonnians, consider the Skaven to be just another species of beastmen rather than their own separate race, and they hold no notion of the sheer magnitude of the threat the Skaven pose to the world above their tunnels. But some races are painfully aware of the threat the Skaven pose. For example, the dwarfs have for a very long time indeed been trying to get the Empire to understand exactly what the Skaven are, since they have been fighting them in their mountain holds for hundreds of years. And many of the human nations to the south, Tila, Estonia, and Arabe, have a far more confrontational relationship with the Skaven than the Empire do, as these lands are often raided by the Skaven, as the Skaven see these smaller human nations as less of a threat to them than the Empire, and as such they are more willing to show their hands in these areas, knowing that the secular empire is not really going to believe anything these nations tell them anyway. Hell, if they still don't believe their closest ally, the dwarfs, some Arabean chief is not going to make much impression upon them. And occupying, as they do, these millions of miles of tunnels and massive underground cities, the Skaven population is gargantuan. In all due likelihood, the Skavens outnumber every other nation in the Warhammer world put together, and the only thing stopping them from rising up out of their tunnels and overrunning the world above is that they all hate the shit out of each other, and are wholly convinced that if they were to rise up to the surface, that backstabbing bastard over in the next burrow is going to steal all the credit. So, before any uprising can be considered, that bastard needs to die. And so it goes. No clan is willing to trust the other clans. The only times the Skaven under Empire has risen in numbers is when they have been united by a particularly powerful leader that has been able to just beat the shit out of anyone disagreeing with him, or when the Horned Rat himself manifested into the world and told everyone that they had best play nice and do what he tells them to, otherwise he's going to be gnawing on their entrails for all eternity. So while the Skaven may be the biggest single threat to the Warhammer world, bigger even than Chaos, they are so torn by internal strife that most of the time, many of the races of the Warhammer world don't even know they exist. And all of these wonderful little quirks and traits is why I love the Skaven so much, and why I hope that over the course of these videos you'll take a liking to them too. So, if you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. I've been Arch, thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.